What if your entire people's survival depended on a single conversation you had to have with the most powerful person in the world? This is exactly the position a young Jewish woman named Esther found herself in over 2,000 years ago in the Jewish people were living in exile, scattered across the Persian Empire after the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem. Among them was a young orphaned girl named Hadassah, better known by her Persian name, Esther. Esther wasn't actually a slave, but rather an orphan raised by her older cousin Mordecai in the Persian capital of Susa. Mordecai had taken her in when her parents died, raising her as his own daughter. She was described as having a lovely figure and was beautiful to look at, but her true beauty would prove to be her character, courage, and faith. The stage for our drama was set when Queen Vashti made a decision that would change history. King Xerxes was hosting a massive feast, displaying his wealth and power to nobles and officials from across his empire. The celebration had been going on for days when the king, perhaps influenced by wine, summoned Queen Vashti to appear before his guests wearing her royal crown. Now, what exactly did Vashti do wrong? The text in Esther chapter 1 suggests that the king wanted to display her beauty to his guests. Some scholars believe he wanted her to appear wearing only her crown, which would have been deeply humiliating. Vashti refused to come. Her refusal wasn't just personal defiance, it was seen as a threat to the entire social order of the Persian Empire. The king's advisors warned him that if word spread of the queen's disobedience, women throughout the empire might follow her example and refuse to obey their husbands. So Vashti was banished, stripped of her royal position, and could never again come before King Xerxes. This created an opportunity that would seem impossible for a young Jewish woman. The king's officials suggested finding a new queen by gathering beautiful young women from across the empire. They would undergo a year of beauty treatments before meeting the king, and whoever pleased him most would become the new queen. Mordecai saw this as an opportunity and encouraged Esther to participate, but he gave her crucial advice. Don't reveal that you're Jewish. This wasn't cowardice, it was wisdom. Anti-Jewish sentiment existed in the empire, and revealing her identity too early could eliminate her chances. Esther entered the palace and immediately found favor with Haggai, the eunuch in charge of the women. He provided her with the best cosmetics, food, and 7 specially chosen maids. For 12 months, she underwent the prescribed beauty treatments, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with perfumes and cosmetics. When Esther's turn came to meet King Xerxes, she took only what Haggai advised. Her natural beauty and gracious character captivated the king immediately. The Bible tells us in Esther chapter 2, verse 17, "Now the king was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti." Esther had moved from an orphaned Jewish girl to Queen of Persia, ruler over 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia. But her greatest test was yet to come. Meanwhile, Mordecai had uncovered a plot against the king's life and reported it through Esther, earning recognition in the royal records. However, this good deed would later become crucial to the survival of the Jewish people. The villain of our story emerges in the form of Haman, a high-ranking official whom King Xerxes promoted above all other nobles. Everyone was required to bow down to Haman, but Mordecai refused. As a devout Jew, Mordecai would only bow to God. This infuriated Haman, and when he discovered that Mordecai was Jewish, his anger expanded to encompass all Jewish people throughout the empire. Haman approached King Xerxes with a cunning plan. He told the king there was a certain people scattered throughout the empire whose customs were different from everyone else's, and who didn't obey the king's laws. He convinced Xerxes that these people were a threat and should be destroyed. The king, trusting Haman's judgment, agreed and issued a decree that on a specific day, all Jewish people in the empire would be killed and their property seized. When Mordecai learned of this decree, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went into the city wailing loudly and bitterly. He sent word to Esther, urging her to go before the king and plead for her people's lives. But Esther faced a seemingly impossible situation. Persian law stated that anyone who approached the king without being summoned would be put to death, unless the king extended his golden scepter. Esther hadn't been called to see the king for 30 days. Going to him uninvited could mean her death. Mordecai's response contains one of the most powerful passages in the Bible. In Esther chapter 4, verses 13 and 14, he tells her, "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. For such a time as this. These words have inspired countless people throughout history, facing their own crucial moments. Mordecai was telling Esther that her elevation to queen wasn't coincidence, it was providence. God had positioned her exactly where she needed to be for this moment. Esther made her decision. She asked all the Jews in Susa to fast for 3 days, and she would do the same. Then she would go to the king, and if I perish, I perish. On the 3rd day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace. When King Xerxes saw her, she found favor in his sight, and he extended the golden scepter toward her. She was safe, but her mission had just begun. Esther wisely didn't immediately reveal her request. Instead, she invited the king and Haman to a banquet. At the banquet, when the king asked what she wanted, she invited them to another banquet the following day, promising to reveal her request then. That night, the king couldn't sleep. He had the royal records read to him and was reminded of how Mordecai had saved his life by reporting the assassination plot. The king realized Mordecai had never been honored for this service. The next morning, Haman came to request permission to hang Mordecai on the gallows he had built. But before he could speak, the king asked him what should be done for someone the king wanted to honor. Thinking the king meant him, Haman suggested elaborate honors, royal robes, a royal horse, and a public proclamation. To Haman's horror, the king commanded him to do all these things for Mordecai. Haman had to lead his enemy through the streets, proclaiming Mordecai's honor. At the second banquet, King Xerxes again asked Esther for her request. This time, she revealed everything. She told the king she was Jewish and that she and her people had been sold for destruction. She identified Haman as the enemy who had plotted their annihilation. The king was furious. Haman was executed on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. But the original decree couldn't be revoked under Persian law. Instead, the king issued a new decree allowing the Jews to defend themselves and fight back against their enemies. The story of Esther teaches us profound lessons about courage, identity, and divine timing. Esther shows us that sometimes we must risk everything to stand up for what's right. She also demonstrates the importance of preparation, wisdom, and seeking counsel from trusted advisors. Mordecai's words remind us that we may be positioned exactly where we are for a specific purpose. Our circumstances, even difficult ones, might be preparing us for a moment when we can make a crucial difference. The story also reveals how God works behind the scenes. Though God is never explicitly mentioned in the book of Esther, his hand is evident throughout, orchestrating events to save his people. Esther's story reminds us that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things when they act with courage and faith.